Welcome to the Troutline Podcast.
Hey, birds.
I'm in the car.
No throwing pianos.
Something burning.
Pick it up.
There's a skunk outside. How do you know? 'Cause it stinks.
Go right again. Yeah, that's what the dog said.
Let's go before we spend any more money.
Here we are. We are here with Popop, with Dad. And Dad is here to tell us a little bit about his family, what he remembers, what he was told, maybe. Not a whole genealogy like some chapters of the Bible, but, you know, maybe what you remember and what you were told about your family's origins.
Yeah, I was thinking on the way over here that I can remember as far back as my grandparents and one great-grandfather beyond that. But that would be the same, Catherine, as your kids thinking about me or talking about me in the future. That's amazing to think. I only know as far back as my grandparents, really.
Wow.
Because we were raised in Peru, so we didn't get to see them a whole lot. And by the time we came back, you know, most of them were either on their way out or gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, so what do you want me to start with?
Well, let's start with your grandparents. You remember them. Tell us about them.
Yeah, well, starting on my dad's side, Dad, that would be Grandpop. His dad was March and his mother was Evelyn. And they met, I heard the story that they met at a park because March was from up near Allentown, Pennsylvania. His parents were coal miners. And so he came down to Philadelphia to work in the oil companies for Sun Oil Company. And on weekends, he went to the parks because they didn't have anything else to do, I guess. He was at a boarding home and he met Evelyn at the park. And I think it was love at first bite or first sight. And he tells the story that he walked up to her. He saw her there at the park and he said, "Hello, I'm March Trout." And she said, "And I'm Evelyn Fisher." And he thought she was joking because who introduces themselves to a trout as a fisher, you know? But he found out she was telling the truth. She was Evelyn Fisher. And so March and Evelyn eventually got married. And so the fisher caught the trout. But anyway, as far back as I know on my grandmother's side, Evelyn, her father, his name was Otis, and I believe his wife was May or Mabel or May. But they have a very interesting story. They owned a farm up in H, Pennsylvania. That's AITCH. And the Army Corps of Engineers built a dam and flooded the entire valley. And so he had a 40-acre farm. And they paid him $3,000 for his 40-acre farm.
Oh, wow.
And he was not happy. So I met Otis Fisher when I was probably 14 years old. We went over to see him. He lived in Delaware because he had lost the farm, moved down this way. But anyway, he was a very interesting fellow. Anyway, his daughter was Evelyn. And because they lost the farm, they moved down to close to Philadelphia, and that's where they met. She met March. So that's the story on my dad's side. Very interesting. Now, on my mom's side, my mom came to know the Lord in high school, Bartram High School in West Philadelphia. The school nurse would hold a little Bible study for the girls during lunchtime in the nurse's office. And that's where my mother came to know the Lord. Her parents were not, well, her father, Grandpop, was not a believer, but I believe that Grandmom, Dick Owner, that would be Mom's mother, she definitely was. But anyway, Dad and Mom met at a church. Mom was singing in the choir, and my father visited that church. And he said, "I want to get to know that young lady up there." So he joined the choir. He couldn't sing worth a penny, but he joined the choir.
Oh, that's great.
And that's where they got to know each other. So that's mom and dad. Now, on my mom's side, though, I don't know much beyond Alfred and Catherine. They were my mother's parents because they came from Germany, and I don't have any record beyond that. So that's where that line stops. Although you've done some work with the genealogy, right, Catherine?
A little bit, yeah. Once the records go over there, I can't speak German, so I don't know what they're saying. I can't trace them.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you have any memories of your grandparents that really stood out to you as unique?
Well, my grandpa, Dick Honer, that would be my mother's father, he worked at a machine shop in Philadelphia, and he rode the trolley every day. So when we would come home from Peru every 4 years, we would stay with Alfred, Grandpa Dick Honer. And anyway, he was a machinist. He worked at the same company for like 60 years.
Wow.
Never had a driver's license. Or no, never had a car. He had a driver's license, but he rode the trolley. He never had to have a car.
Wow.
He was an interesting fellow. He read out of his German Bible, and he would yell at us in German when us kids were running around making too much noise in the house. They lived in a row home in Philadelphia. And so those were my memories of my grandpa. Catherine, she had a condition of dementia. I guess it was Alzheimer's. They called it hardening of the arteries back then. So I only remember her sitting in a chair. She could not communicate at that point I was very young at that point. So those are my memories of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You want to hear on my dad's side?
Yeah.
Well, my grandpa Trout, what I remember about him was his interest in metals. He was the one who moved down from the coal mines to come down and work in Philadelphia in the oil companies. And he became a specialist with metals, aluminums, brass and copper and bronze and iron and all those things. And he would work. In fact, one time he went up and worked on the Alaska pipeline. I think it was the Alaska pipeline, but with the metals. But he was a very interesting fellow because in his basement, he had all these pieces of metals, and he would experiment with different colors and welding different color metals together, and very interesting fellow.
Oh, that's neat. That's neat.
Now, my grandmother, Evelyn, she had a real knack for a green thumb, I guess you call it, with plants. Her backyard looked like a museum. It was just incredible. Everywhere they would go, they would bring home a plant from that area, and the whole backyard was just beautiful, manicured. She just worked a lot out in her garden with all the different plants.
Did you ever have opportunities to sit and talk with them? Did you have a relationship like that with them when you were younger? What would it be like going over to visit them and, have lunch with them or something?
Well, like I said, we only saw them every 4 years, so didn't have a whole lot of time in between, but we would see them. They would have us over. I remember my grandmother loved lentil soup, and she always called it lentiles for Gentiles. They would have us over, and then Grandpa would make things with us, birdhouses and boxes and all kinds of things. He was so handy with tinkering with things. Yeah. So we have good memories of them. Now, our other grandparents, we lived with them every 4 years. So that was interesting, other than the fact that we got yelled at in German a lot. And bringen Sie mir ein Glas Wasser, bitte. And that means bring me a glass of water, please. Ein Tasse Kaffee, bitte. Bring me some coffee. I think that's German. Is that German? Maybe he made it up. I don't know. He was quite a character, Grandpa Dick Honer. He would, when he was done, he ate a lot of butter on his bread. He was a good German. And what he would do is, this is so strange, but he would take his butter knife and put butter on, if you can think of spreading butter on your bread. And then when he was done, he would take the knife and he'd wipe it on his arm, both sides of the knife, and then take the butter off his arm and rub it in his hands and put it in his hair. And he died with a full set of hair, and he always said it was the butter that kept his hair growing.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if that maybe is a secret that could make people $1 million.
Oh, my goodness.
That was Grandpa Dick Owner's remedy for growing hair. Always clean your butter knife on your arm and then rub it in your hair.
Did you ever try that?
No, obviously not, because my hair fell out. So maybe I should try that. Oh, brother.
You didn't take his advice.
I didn't. No. No, every 4 years we'd come and stay with Grandpa Dick Owner. And, of course, at that time, Catherine had passed away, Grandmom. So he lived alone, but he lived in a row home, 2102 South 67th Street, West Philadelphia. And all the homes look the same from the street. They all have the same steps. The porches kind of look the same. And hot summer nights, we'd come out because the house was so hot. He didn't have air conditioning, and we just had some fans. So we'd all sit out on the porches at night. And the water ice truck would come along, and we'd get water ice or pretzels, with mustard on them, or eat Philly cheesesteaks. It was just, those are the memories of being at Grandpop's house.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Well, a verse that comes to mind, though, is Psalm 16:6. The lines have fallen unto me in pleasant places. I have a goodly heritage. And, I can honestly say my parents weren't perfect. My grandparents weren't perfect. But when you look back on it, you say, wow, thank the Lord for a goodly heritage. We could have been born somewhere else in the world. And yet God, in his sovereignty, his mercy, allowed us to be born in this country of opportunity, and where we, like my mother, had a chance to hear the gospel from a school nurse. And then my father, heard the gospel. He was the first one in his family. And then from there it grew, and it was transmitted on to us kids. Yeah.
So your parents, when they met, tell me about that. You told me how they met. Do you know anything about their courtship, about their, how their relationship developed?
Well, from what my parents have told me, my father worked every summer as a lifeguard down at the shore, New Jersey. And he had come back from the summer, and my mother was working in an office in Philadelphia. She was a secretary, and he just happened to go to that church. He heard that there was a good pastor there, and so he showed up at that church, and that's where he saw her in the choir and said, I've got to meet that person. So he joined the choir. So it was kind of random because that choir didn't sing every Sunday. So had he gone another Sunday, he probably would have just listened and then moved on to another church. I don't know. But God had it arranged so they would meet. Mm-hmm. And they began dating, and soon after got married. I remember my father saying he asked Grandpa Dick Owner for her hand in marriage, and Grandpa Dick Owner said something to the effect, yes, you can have her, but don't move too far away. Because my father lived in Norwood, which is about 4 miles from Philadelphia.
Wow.
Little did he know that they'd get married and move to South America.
Famous last words.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. See, Mom had 2 brothers who were twins, identical twins, Ed and Al, and she practically raised those kids. So he didn't want her moving too far away. He wanted her to still have influence, I guess, in their lives. Mm. Yeah.
So tell me about their childhoods from what you have been told, your father's. And your mother's?
I don't know much about their childhood. My dad just told us how, he was raised in the same house that he passed away in. That was the house that Grandpop had bought when he moved down to Philadelphia. So Dad grew up in that little house on Cleveland Avenue in Norwood, 210 Cleveland Avenue, which is right down from the river, or right up from the river. And my dad loved swimming. That kind of began his whole love of water. He had a kayak, he built a canoe. He'd go down fishing right down at the end of the street. They'd get in the water and go out into the Delaware River. And so he grew up in that, around the outdoors, whereas my mom, on the other hand, was a city girl. She grew up in the row home and trolleys and, city streets and street lights and all kinds of noise, whereas Dad grew up in the country. So they had very different upbringings.
Mm.
The one thing I remember about my mother, she said, because the twins were a handful, and she and her sister practically raised the twins because of grandmom showing these signs of the dementia that had started really early, and so she wasn't able to really care for the twins like she should have. So Mom kind of jumped in. So a lot of her childhood was raising those boys, working with the boys.
Mm.
Yeah, but that's what they did back then. Grandpop was at work every day, the machine shop, and so she would take care of the boys. They'd make supper and then take care of her mother, too, as she was in decline.
Mm. Mm-hmm. I remember Grandpop telling stories about working as a young boy. Do you remember how early he went to work as a...
No, I don't remember. I do remember him working when he was 12 years old. He was working up at the gas station there in Norwood. He just started pumping gas. That's when, back then, you couldn't pump your own gas. They had people do it for you. So he started out early. He was very industrious. He would go out and work in the fields. There were a lot of farms around there. So any moment he had, he was either reading books or out working.
Mm. That's great. What did he do for work after they married?
Yeah, Grandpop's, or my father's, first job, I believe, was construction. He started in the construction fields, and then soon after that, he was a carpenter, but soon after that, he felt the Lord leading him to go to Bible school. So he and Mom, this is before any of the kids were along, went to Lancaster School of the Bible. He spent 3 years up there, and then he came back and went to school in Philadelphia. And then he took other classes to be a teacher and taught in the public school for a while. He was a math teacher. So yeah, he did a lot of different things.
Yep.
Then when he was a math teacher, he just felt the Lord leading him to go to South America as a missionary. So that's when we came along, us kids. I guess it was just my brother and me, and we went, and then my sisters were born, and little by little the family grew.
Mm-hmm. Did he have Peru specifically in mind, or did that come, later?
From what he told me, Peru kind of came on his mind because the church that they were attending, where my mom sang in the choir, was very missions minded. And so they were always putting before the young people in the church the opportunities out there to serve God in different places. And one of the things that he told me really gave him the impulse to go to South America was the Nate Saint and the Alca Indians, if you remember that story of how the missionaries lost their lives going to reach the Auca Indians in Ecuador. And because Nate Sate, one of the ones that passed away in that incident, he was from nearby in Pennsylvania there, just right outside our county. So he was very familiar with the Saint family, and I think that was part of the impact of that got him thinking, those missionaries lost their lives. Maybe some of us can step up and fill in, pick up where they left off.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the move to Peru?
Well, the first time they went to Peru, I was pretty young. I was only like 2 years old, so I wouldn't remember. But I do remember every other time, every 4 years, we'd pack up, put everything in boxes and barrels and ship everything. And then we would fly. Now, flying to Peru was not, jump on a jet and you're there. We'd go from Philadelphia to Miami, from Miami to Mexico City to Bogota, Colombia, Bogota to Quito, Ecuador to Lima. And the whole trip was about 36 hours, I remember it would take us. By the time we would get there, we were pretty, what would we say, ragged out.
Bedraggled.
Yeah, it was a very long trip. And they were just turboprop planes, no jets back then. Everything was slow.
Wow. So you went a couple of times, or was there one move?
As far as
you moved, the whole family moved?
Yeah, we moved there the first time, but then every time we came back to the States every 4 years, we were just renting a house in Peru. So we'd pack everything up, either store it or give it away or sell it. And every time we went back, we left a few things there, but it was like setting up all over again because it was a new location, new house.
Wow, okay.
Now, the last 2 times we were in one place. We lived at a seminary, and my dad had built the house there. And so it wasn't his house, but he built it, and it belonged to the school, but it was pretty much designated for us. So we could leave everything there.
Wow. I can't imagine, being a mother and trying to have all these kids and their needs and, having that all change every couple of years and in this big trip. And
yeah, my mom was quite a trooper, I tell you. I've got all kinds of stories. I'm writing some of these down, and I'll share them sometime. But my mother was quite a tough person. Yeah, I guess you have to be when you're in missions. I'll just tell you one quick story. One time we had a little car called a Standard Vanguard. It's a British car. Only has 2 doors, and then you get in the back. It only seats like 6 people, but we had one. And Mom, we were going down the International Highway. Now that sounds huge, doesn't it? But it's just 2 lanes. It's 1 lane north and 1 lane south. And we were going into town, and a policeman came up beside us, and he's waving at us. And this is one of the Peruvian policemen. And so my mom just rolls the window down and says, "Hola, ¿cómo estás?" And she's waving to her. And the guy's waving. He's getting more and more mad. And we're like, "Mom, I think he's telling us to move over." And she says, "Well, there's nowhere to get off the road because it's 1 lane and we're going on that road, right?" So we're just driving along, and he's getting really mad because he had to pull out in the oncoming traffic to get beside us. And then he would get behind us. And then he'd come up beside us when there was a break, and he kept waving us over. Well, finally, Mom found a place where she could pull off. And so she pulled off. And wouldn't you know, it was the president of Peru and his motorcade behind us. We held up the whole motorcade. And my dad later says, "Ruth, you could have been arrested for that. You were obstructing the motorcade." Well, we didn't know. She says, "Oh, well, I guess the Lord took care of me, took care of all of us." So yeah, my mom was quite a trooper.
You gotta wonder, she told those stories about the twins and how rambunctious they were, and how God might have prepared her for all of that moving and I don't know, with her brothers. All the years that she had to pack you guys up and handle you on planes and whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to stop here, and I have more questions for you. So I'm going to write them down next time. And you be thinking too, it'll be good to hear from you, from your own mouth, all these stories. And we remember them as you're telling them too, because we've forgotten. So yeah, thanks, Dad.
Okay.
You have any parting wisdom?
Well, I have these emergency dad jokes I can always pull out if there's ever a blank space. So, what kind of shoes do frogs wear, Catherine?
What's that?
Oh, they're open-toed shoes.
Good one.
All right.
Well, thanks, Dad.
Thank you for listening to the Troutline Podcast. Let's go before we spend any more money.